Clara had never been to a place like this before. The city she had grown up in was full of noise. Buses honking, people shouting, traffic lights blinking, and the constant hum of life. But as the plane touched down at the small Montana airport, the silence struck her like a wave. There were no cars rushing past, no sirens wailing, just the open expanse of land stretching far beyond what her eyes could see. The mountains stood like silent guardians in the distance, their peaks dusted with the first hints of winter snow. Clara felt a strange mix of excitement and unease. She had come to help her aunt, but the thought of being so far from everything familiar made her heart race. The ranch itself wasn't visible from the main road. She had to drive for almost an hour down a narrow dirt path lined with tall pines before the property finally appeared. A wide wooden fence marked the boundary, and beyond it lay acres of land dotted with barns, a stable and fields where horses grazed quietly. A thin wisp of smoke rose from the chimney of the main house, signaling life inside. Clara parked her car at the edge of the yard, stepping out into the crisp air. It smelled of pine, earth, and something else she couldn't quite place. Freedom, maybe, or perhaps just the raw scent of the land untouched by concrete and steel. "Hello?" she called softly, half expecting no one to hear her. The wind carried her voice into the distance, and for a moment there was only silence. Then from the barn the sound of footsteps approached. A tall man appeared, his boots crunching on the gravel. He was broad-shouldered, dressed in a worn flannel shirt and jeans with a hat pulled low over his eyes. His expression was guarded and his movements were deliberate. Clara's heart skipped a beat, unsure how to greet a man who seemed more a part of the land than a visitor like her. "Hi," she said again, trying to sound cheerful despite the nervous flutter in her chest. "I'm Clara. I'm here to help my aunt." The man froze for a moment, studying her. His eyes were a deep shade of brown, thoughtful, almost cautious, but not unkind. "Ethan," he said finally, his voice low and calm. "Your aunt told me to expect you." He paused, then gestured toward the house. "She's inside. Come on." Clara followed him along the gravel path, her boots crunching with every step. The ranch smelled of hay and wood smoke, and she could hear the distant sound of cattle lowing. It was peaceful, yes, but also intimidating. Everything was so vast, so open. She had spent her life in apartments and offices. Here, the horizon stretched endlessly, and the sky seemed bigger, brighter, almost impossibly wide. Inside the house, her aunt, Margaret, sat in a chair by the fireplace. She was thinner than Clara remembered, and her hands shook slightly as she held a cup of tea. "Clara," her aunt exclaimed, her voice weak but warm. "You came." "I'm here, Aunt Maggie," Clara said, moving forward to hug her. Margaret's embrace was gentle, almost fragile, and Clara realized how much time had passed since she last saw her. The aunt's illness had progressed more than Clara had imagined, and the lines on her face, the weariness in her eyes, made Clara feel both sadness and determination. She had come to help, and she wasn't going to leave until she had done everything she could. Ethan moved quietly to the side, placing a stack of firewood beside the fireplace. He didn't speak, but his presence was steady, a kind of silent reassurance. Clara noticed how easily he handled the chores around the house, how natural it seemed for him to move through the space as if it had always belonged to him. There was a quiet strength in him that was different from anything she had experienced in the city, a reliability that didn't demand attention, but earned respect. As the afternoon passed, Clara helped her aunt settle into a more comfortable chair, fetched warm blankets, and organized the kitchen. Ethan showed her how to handle some of the daily chores like feeding the chickens and collecting eggs. Clara laughed at how awkward she felt holding the basket, trying not to startle the birds. Ethan's calm, patient instructions made it easier, though she could sense that he wasn't someone to rush or push. He seemed to move with the rhythm of the ranch, as though the land itself guided him. When it came time to check the animals, Clara followed Ethan outside. The wind had picked up, carrying a chill that made her cheeks pink. Horses grazed nearby, their tails flicking, their ears twitching at the slightest sound. Clara had ridden horses before, but never on this scale, and never in such open, untamed land. She felt a shiver of awe and fear at the vastness surrounding her. Ethan's presence next to her was steadying, though he didn't speak much. Occasionally he would point something out, a patch of weak grass, a fence post that needed repair, but mostly he moved silently, his eyes scanning the land as if he understood every inch of it. By evening, Clara's legs ached from all the walking, but she felt a sense of accomplishment. Margaret sat in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, watching her niece with a proud smile. "You're going to be a big help here," she said softly. Clara returned the smile, though she felt the weight of responsibility pressing on her shoulders. Dinner was simple, a hearty stew made with vegetables from the garden and meat from the farm. Clara noticed how Ethan worked alongside Margaret to prepare the meal, chopping vegetables, stirring the pot, and occasionally exchanging quiet words with her aunt. He was efficient but careful, never rushing, never careless. It was the kind of work Clara had never experienced, work that demanded patience, attention, and a deep respect for the world around you. After dinner, the three of them sat by the fire. Margaret spoke about her life on the ranch, the challenges she had faced, and the pride she felt in keeping the land running. Clara listened intently, fascinated by the stories of long winters, unpredictable weather, and the endless effort required to maintain the property. Ethan added a few remarks, brief but meaningful, his words reflecting a deep understanding of the land and its rhythms. Clara realized she was learning more than just chores. She was learning a way of life, one that was slower, more deliberate, and deeply connected to nature. As night fell, Clara stepped outside for a moment, looking up at the sky. The stars were countless, brighter than anything she had ever seen in the city. The Milky Way stretched across the horizon, a river of light that seemed to promise something infinite and enduring. The ranch felt alive in a way she hadn't expected. It was quiet, yes, but it was a living, breathing place, full of challenges and beauty intertwined. Ethan joined her silently, standing a few feet away. He didn't speak, but his presence was reassuring, like a lighthouse in the vast darkness. Clara felt a strange mixture of calm and anticipation. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but she knew one thing. This ranch, these people, and this land had already begun to change her. She felt the first stirrings of something new, responsibility, connection, and perhaps even belonging. As she went to bed that night, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that her life had shifted in a way she hadn't expected. The city seemed far away now, almost unreal. Here, on this quiet ranch, surrounded by open land and the steady presence of Ethan and her aunt, she felt the beginnings of a story that was larger than herself. Something had started, something real, and she knew that the days to come would test her, challenge her, and maybe, just maybe, lead her to discover parts of herself she had never known. The first day had ended, but it was only the beginning. Clara closed her eyes, listening to the wind whisper through the trees and the faint lowing of the cattle. The ranch was alive, and so was she, caught between fear and fascination, ready to face whatever this place had in store. The next morning, Clara woke to the soft light of the sun streaming through the curtains. The room smelled faintly of pine and smoke, a reminder that she was far from the city she had known all her life. She stretched carefully, mindful of the aches from yesterday's long walk around the ranch. Her ankle felt a little sore, though she had expected that. City feet were not used to such rough terrain. She swung her legs over the edge of the bed and glanced out the window. The ranch was already alive with activity. The horses moving in the pasture, the distant lowing of cattle, and the sound of Ethan's boots crunching on gravel as he began the morning chores. Clara dressed quickly and went downstairs. Margaret was already seated at the small kitchen table, sipping her tea, her eyes bright despite her frailty. "Good morning," Clara said cheerfully, though a hint of nerves lingered. She had felt a little awkward around Ethan yesterday, unsure how to read his expressions or understand his quiet presence. "Morning, dear," Margaret replied warmly. "Ethan has already started in the barn. You might want to join him soon. The horses need feeding before it gets too warm." Clara nodded, feeling both anticipation and unease. She had never really worked with animals before, at least not on a scale like this. Horses were massive and strong, and the idea of managing them on her own made her heart beat faster. But she had come to help, and she was determined to learn. When she stepped outside, the crisp air hit her like a cool wave. The sun was just rising over the mountains, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. Ethan was near the barn, moving with a quiet efficiency. He noticed her and gave a brief nod, a simple acknowledgement that she had arrived. Clara felt a flutter of nervousness but walked toward him. "Good morning," she said softly. "What should I do first?" Ethan glanced at her, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then, with a calm but deliberate tone, he said, "We'll start with the horses. There are 5 to feed and groom. I'll show you." Clara followed him inside the barn. The smell of hay and leather was strong, but it was not unpleasant. The horses lifted their heads as she entered, nostrils flaring, ears twitching. One of them, a chestnut mare, stamped its hoof and let out a soft whinny. Clara froze for a moment, unsure how to react. She had always admired horses from a distance, but standing this close made her realize just how powerful and graceful they were. Ethan approached her, placing a hand gently on the mare's neck. "Easy," he murmured, stroking the animal's mane. Clara watched, fascinated as the horse relaxed under his touch. Then he turned to her. "Go slowly. Speak softly. Don't rush." Clara nodded and cautiously stepped forward. Her first attempt at petting the horse was clumsy, and the mare moved away slightly, letting out a soft snort. Clara's cheeks turned pink with embarrassment. Ethan chuckled softly, not in mockery, but in gentle encouragement. "It's all right. Horses can feel fear. Be calm, and they will follow." She tried again, this time focusing on her breathing and movements. Slowly, the mare lowered her head, allowing Clara to run her hands along its smooth coat. A thrill of accomplishment ran through her. She had expected fear, but instead she felt a connection. Fragile but real. Ethan watched silently, nodding slightly in approval. The morning passed with more lessons. Clara learned how to feed the horses, clean their stalls, and check for small injuries. She discovered that each animal had its own personality and quirks, and handling them required patience and observation. She made mistakes, dropping a bucket here, startling a horse there, but Ethan was always there to guide her without scolding. By midday, Clara's ankle began to ache more than she expected. She tried to ignore it at first, not wanting to seem weak or incapable, but as she walked toward the next stall, a sharp pain shot through her foot, making her stumble. She cried out softly, catching herself on the edge of the stall. Ethan was immediately by her side, his expression serious now, no trace of the calm detachment he usually carried. "Clara, are you all right?" he asked, his voice low but firm. I think so," she said, wincing. The pain was sharp, and she realized she couldn't put weight on her ankle without struggling. Ethan assessed the situation quickly. He crouched beside her, gently examining the ankle. "You twisted it," he said quietly. "It's swollen. You need to sit down before it gets worse." Clara nodded, grateful for his calm presence. He helped her to a nearby bench, his hand steady and careful. She could feel his concern, genuine and unspoken, and for a moment she felt a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. She had expected roughness from someone so tied to the land, but Ethan's touch was precise and kind. "Don't worry," he said softly, sensing her anxiety. "It'll be over quick." His words were simple, but the way he said them, steady, reassuring, brought a small measure of comfort. Clara closed her eyes, letting herself relax slightly, trusting him to help her through the pain. He fetched a cold cloth and wrapped her ankle, speaking in calm tones about the importance of rest and elevation. Clara listened, trying to follow his instructions, grateful for his patience. Even in pain, she couldn't help noticing how capable he was, how natural his movement seemed. There was a quiet strength in him, a certainty that seemed to belong to the land itself. Once her ankle was wrapped, Ethan helped her to the house, supporting her as they walked. Margaret was waiting, concern etched on her face. Clara felt a rush of gratitude toward both of them. The city could not have prepared her for such a sudden reliance on others, and yet she found herself oddly comforted by it. The rest of the afternoon was spent mostly inside. Clara rested her ankle, sipping tea and listening to the sounds of the ranch outside. The wind whispered through the trees, and the distant lowing of cattle reminded her that life here moved at its own pace. She watched Ethan work quietly in the yard, repairing a fence with careful, methodical movements. Even though she couldn't help much physically, she felt a sense of connection just by observing him, learning from the way he interacted with the land and animals. By evening, Clara's ankle had swollen further, and she realized that she would need more help than she initially thought. Ethan noticed and insisted on bandaging it more securely, speaking calmly and encouraging her to rest. Clara felt a deep sense of gratitude. His calm, steady presence made her feel safe in a way she hadn't expected. Dinner was quiet that night, eaten by the fire. Margaret fussed over Clara, making sure she had enough to eat and drink, while Ethan remained quietly helpful in the background. Clara felt an unexpected warmth in the room, a sense of family and care that she hadn't realized she was missing. The day's events had been challenging, even painful, but they had also brought her closer to understanding the rhythm of life on the ranch. After dinner, Clara settled near the fireplace, reflecting on the day. She realized that the accident with her ankle, while unpleasant, had shown her the kindness and patience of people she had barely known. Ethan's quiet guidance, Margaret's gentle care, and the steady presence of the animals made her feel part of something larger than herself. She also recognized the limits of her own strength, understanding that accepting help was not a weakness but a necessary part of living in this world. As night fell, the ranch was quiet except for the occasional rustle of animals and the soft hum of the wind. Clara thought about tomorrow, about the work still to be done, and about how she would need to rely on others and herself to face the challenges ahead. Her ankle throbbed slightly, a reminder of both vulnerability and resilience. She knew that the days to come would test her, but she also felt a spark of determination. She had come here to help her aunt, but already she felt the ranch beginning to change her, teaching her lessons that went far beyond simple chores. Before going to bed, she peeked outside once more. The stars were bright and countless, painting the night sky with a brilliance that made her city memories feel distant and small. Ethan stood outside as well, looking at the horizon, silent and strong. Clara felt a strange mixture of gratitude, curiosity, and trust. The day had been difficult, but it had also been a revelation. She realized that sometimes pain and challenge could bring people closer, create understanding, and reveal hidden strengths. As she finally lay down to sleep, Clara whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will be better." She didn't know exactly what challenges awaited, but she felt ready, or at least as ready as anyone could be to face them. The ranch had already begun to leave its mark on her, and she was determined to grow stronger, learn faster, and become a part of this life she was only just beginning to understand. The following days passed slowly, yet each moment seemed full of life. Clara's ankle was slowly healing, though it still ached after walking for too long. She spent most mornings helping Margaret with small chores around the house, from cleaning to preparing meals, while Ethan tended to the land and animals outside. Even though she could not do everything herself, Clara felt a growing sense of pride. Each small task she accomplished made her feel like she belonged, even in this vast and unfamiliar place. Ethan noticed her careful efforts and sometimes offered guidance. "Don't rush it," he would say gently when Clara tried to move too quickly. "The land will wait, but you need to listen to yourself too." Clara appreciated his calm patience. There was a quiet strength about him, a natural authority that never demanded respect but earned it. Watching him work made her realize that living on a ranch required more than physical strength. It required patience, observation, and care. One morning, Ethan asked her to come along to check the fences near the pasture. The sun was just rising, casting long shadows across the fields. Clara leaned lightly on her walking stick, still careful with her ankle. The walk was long, but the scenery was breathtaking. She had never seen anything like it. The endless fields, the mountains rising in the distance, the soft rustling of trees in the wind. The fresh air filled her lungs, and for a moment all her worries seemed distant. As they walked, Ethan told her about the ranch's history. "My grandfather started this place over 50 years ago," he said quietly, his eyes scanning the horizon. "It's been in our family ever since. Every fence, every pasture, every building tells a story." Clara listened, fascinated. She had never thought much about land in this way. To her, property had always been just a place to live. Here it was alive, carrying memories and effort from generations before. When they reached the far pasture, Ethan stopped to inspect a fence post. "This one is loose," he said. "We'll need to replace it before the next storm." Clara knelt to watch him work, impressed by how skilled he was with his hands. His movements were careful, precise, yet confident, each action deliberate. She noticed how naturally he moved among the animals, how they trusted him completely. There was a calm authority in the way he spoke to them, a connection that went beyond commands or instructions. Clara tried helping him, though she mostly handed him tools or held materials. Even so, she felt useful, and the sense of teamwork made her feel closer to the ranch. She realized that these quiet, shared tasks created a bond that words alone could not. Watching Ethan work, and being trusted to assist, made her feel included and respected. By afternoon, they returned to the house. Margaret was waiting with a warm meal, and Clara's stomach rumbled with hunger. As they ate, the three of them shared stories of the day's small victories and challenges. Margaret spoke about the animals, recounting anecdotes that made Clara laugh. Ethan added small comments, always calm, his words measured but meaningful. Clara noticed that even when he spoke little, his presence alone was reassuring. She had come to rely on it without fully realizing it. Later, as the sun began to lower behind the mountains, Clara decided to take a short walk around the property to stretch her legs. She moved carefully, favoring her injured ankle, but the need to feel the land beneath her feet was strong. The soft rustle of leaves and the distant sounds of the horses created a soothing rhythm. She paused near the creek at the edge of the property, watching the water ripple over smooth stones. The sound was calming, a gentle melody that seemed to speak to her in a way words could not. Ethan appeared beside her silently, as if he had been there all along. Clara smiled, startled at first by his quiet approach. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, gesturing toward the creek. Clara nodded. "It's peaceful, almost like it belongs to no one," she replied. "It belongs to everyone who respects it," Ethan said. His voice was soft, almost thoughtful, carrying a sense of understanding she found comforting. "And sometimes it teaches us more than we realize: patience, care, strength." Clara felt the weight of his words. She had come here thinking she was the one who would teach or help, but she realized the land and Ethan were teaching her. Over the next few days, Clara's confidence grew. She learned to feed the horses without fear, to lift hay bales without straining herself, and to manage small tasks around the house. Ethan continued to guide her with quiet patience, never rushing, never criticizing harshly. Slowly, she began to understand the rhythm of the ranch, the way the land dictated tasks, the way animals needed attention at specific times, and how work, no matter how small, contributed to the whole. One afternoon, as she rested on the porch with a cup of tea, Clara noticed a storm gathering on the horizon. Dark clouds rolled in quickly, the wind picking up as if announcing its arrival. Ethan came out to join her, pointing to the distant mountains. "Looks like a strong one," he said calmly. Clara felt a twinge of anxiety. She had read about storms in the city, but experiencing one in this open, exposed land was something entirely different. "We need to secure the animals and check the barns," Ethan continued. "I'll take the horses. You help your aunt with the smaller tasks inside." Clara nodded, feeling both nervous and eager. She wanted to be helpful, to prove that she could handle the challenges of this place. As the storm approached, the ranch transformed. The wind howled through the trees, rattling windows and doors. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets, soaking the earth and turning the dirt paths to mud. Clara stayed inside, helping Margaret reinforce window latches and move supplies to safer locations. She felt the intensity of the storm, the raw power of nature that she had only admired from a distance before. Hours passed, and the storm raged on. Occasionally, Clara glanced outside, worrying about the animals. She trusted Ethan, knowing he would ensure they were safe, but she still felt a sense of helplessness. The storm's strength reminded her of the challenges of life on the ranch, unpredictable, demanding, and sometimes overwhelming. Yet in that same moment, she also realized that it brought a sense of unity. She, Margaret, and Ethan were working together, each contributing to keep the ranch and its life intact. By evening, the storm began to ease. Clara stepped outside to check on the damage, and Ethan was already inspecting the fences and barns. He nodded toward her. "You did well inside. Margaret told me you kept things organized." Clara smiled, tired but proud. "I wanted to help," she said simply. Ethan's expression softened slightly, and he nodded, a subtle acknowledgement of her effort. That night, as they all gathered around the fireplace, Clara reflected on the day. She realized that living on a ranch was not just about work. It was about connection, patience, and trust. She had faced challenges, her ankle, the storm, the new tasks. But each difficulty had taught her something valuable. She had learned to rely on others, to observe and adapt, and to appreciate the quiet strength of those who dedicated their lives to the land. Ethan, sitting across from her, seemed almost like a part of the landscape itself. His calm presence, his careful attention to the land and animals, and his gentle guidance had shown her a side of life she had never known. She felt a growing respect for him, not just for his skills, but for the way he lived, thoughtfully, patiently, and with quiet integrity. Before going to bed, Clara stepped outside once more. The storm had passed, leaving the land washed clean and sparkling under the moonlight. The stars reflected in the puddles and streams, creating a world that felt magical, almost otherworldly. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for being here, for experiencing the raw beauty and challenges of the ranch, and for the people who had welcomed her into their lives. As she lay down to sleep that night, her thoughts were filled with the lessons of the day. She understood now that the ranch was more than just a place. It was a living, breathing entity that demanded respect, patience, and care, and she realized that she too was changing, growing stronger, learning to trust herself and others, and discovering a sense of belonging she had never felt before. Clara drifted off to sleep with a quiet sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, more work, and perhaps more lessons about life on the ranch. But for the first time, she felt ready to face them, not just as a visitor, but as someone becoming part of this world. The storm had tested them all, but it had also reminded her of the strength of connection, the importance of patience, and the quiet beauty of living close to the land. The days after the storm were calm, almost deceptively peaceful. The sun shone brightly over the ranch, warming the earth and drying the puddles that had formed from the heavy rain. Clara's ankle was improving steadily, though she still had to be careful with long walks. The storm had left small damage, a few broken fence posts, a collapsed section of the barn roof. But Ethan and Clara began fixing the problems together. Margaret, though frail, supervised from inside, offering advice and encouragement. One morning, Ethan suggested they check the far pasture, where a section of fencing had been weakened by the storm. Clara agreed, though a part of her felt nervous about navigating the muddy ground. She had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the ranch, but the land could still be unpredictable. They walked side by side, Clara using her walking stick while Ethan moved steadily beside her, scanning the ground for soft spots or hidden obstacles. When they reached the pasture, Ethan began inspecting the damaged fence. Clara watched, noting the precision in his movements, the way he carefully checked each post. "We'll need to replace these supports," he said quietly. Clara handed him tools as instructed, feeling increasingly competent. Her confidence was growing, not just in handling the work, but in trusting her own judgment and instincts. Suddenly, a low rumble of thunder echoed in the distance. Clara glanced up at the sky and saw dark clouds gathering rapidly, faster than she had anticipated. "Another storm?" she asked, worry creeping into her voice. Ethan looked toward the horizon, his expression calm but serious. "It's coming faster than we expected. We need to secure the animals quickly." He turned to her. "Go back to the house and help your aunt with the smaller animals. I'll take the horses." Clara nodded and started heading back. The wind was picking up, tugging at her hair and coat, making walking more difficult. She felt a sense of urgency mixed with apprehension. The ranch, which had seemed peaceful and safe just moments ago, now felt exposed and vulnerable. Every step reminded her that life here was not predictable. Nature demanded respect. Inside the house, Margaret had already gathered the chickens and smaller animals, placing them in safe, enclosed areas. Clara joined her, moving quickly to help with cages, water, and feed. The sound of the wind growing louder outside reminded her of the power of the approaching storm. She realized that this ranch, this life she was beginning to love, also required constant vigilance and resilience. Meanwhile, Ethan worked tirelessly outside, guiding the horses into temporary stalls and securing loose equipment. Clara peeked out the window and watched him move with calm efficiency despite the rising wind. She felt admiration and concern at the same time. He was strong, capable, and unshakable, but the storm was fierce, and she couldn't help worrying about him. As the storm arrived, rain lashed against the windows in sheets and the wind howled like a living creature. Clara stayed close to Margaret, helping her keep calm. They listened to the sounds outside, the crash of branches, the lowing of distressed animals, and the whistle of the wind through broken fences. It was intense, almost frightening, but Clara realized that fear could coexist with trust. She trusted Ethan to manage the animals, and she trusted herself to support Margaret in the smaller tasks. Hours passed, and the storm showed no sign of letting up. The house shook slightly under the force of the wind, and Clara's heart raced every time a tree branch scraped against the walls. Margaret clasped her hands tightly, whispering, "We'll be fine, Clara. We've faced storms before. We know how to handle them." Clara nodded, drawing strength from her aunt's calm words. Despite the fear, she felt a sense of shared resilience. She was not alone in this. Eventually, the storm reached its peak, the sound of water rushing in nearby streams and mud. Sliding from hillsides reminded Clara of the raw power of nature. At one point, a loud crack echoed from the barn. Clara's heart jumped. She rushed to the window and saw Ethan outside, steady and determined, checking the horses. The sight of him moving calmly through the chaos gave her courage. She realized that calm determination could counter fear, and that courage was often quiet, not loud or dramatic. By late afternoon, the storm began to ease. The rain slowed to a drizzle and the wind lost some of its strength. Clara stepped outside cautiously, helping Margaret inspect the minor damages around the house. Mud covered the paths, and some branches had fallen, but no one was hurt. She felt relief wash over her, a mixture of exhaustion and pride. The storm had tested them and they had endured it together. Ethan joined them shortly after, leading the horses back into their proper stalls. He was wet, muddy and tired, but his calm presence never wavered. Clara felt a wave of admiration. She had seen people in storms before, but never someone who could manage the chaos with such quiet control. He smiled faintly at her, acknowledging her efforts. "You did well," he said softly. "The animals are safe, and your aunt is fine. You should be proud of yourself." Clara smiled back, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She realized that resilience was something learned through experience, not just instinct. That evening, the three of them sat by the fireplace. Margaret served a simple meal, and Clara felt gratitude for its warmth and nourishment. Ethan remained mostly silent, though his quiet presence was comforting. They shared moments of reflection about the storm, discussing what they had learned and how they could improve preparations for the future. Clara felt a sense of growth. She had faced fear, taken responsibility, and learned the importance of teamwork and patience. Later, as Clara rested on the porch, watching the wet land glisten under the last light of the sun, she noticed the way the storm had transformed the ranch. The earth was refreshed, the streams fuller, and even the fallen branches seemed part of the natural rhythm. She thought about how storms, like challenges in life, could be both destructive and renewing. The experience had been frightening, yes, but it had also brought clarity. She felt a deep sense of connection to the land and the people who cared for it. Ethan appeared silently beside her. He handed her a warm blanket without speaking. Clara accepted it with a grateful smile. They stood together, looking out at the ranch, the aftermath of the storm reflected in the mud, puddles, and broken branches. There was a quiet understanding between them, a shared acknowledgement of the day's trials. No words were needed. Their connection had grown stronger through action and trust. As night fell, Clara prepared for bed with a sense of accomplishment. The storm had been a test and she had faced it. She realized that life on the ranch was not only about chores and tasks, it was about understanding nature, responding to its challenges, and learning to adapt. She had learned about courage, patience, and the quiet strength found in collaboration. Before sleep, she walked to the edge of the property one last time. The moonlight reflected off the puddles, creating a sparkling landscape that felt almost magical. She thought about the journey so far, the storm, the work, the connection with Ethan and her aunt, and felt a sense of hope. She was no longer just an outsider looking in. She was part of this world now, learning its ways, respecting its rhythms, and discovering her own strength. Clara climbed into bed, her body tired but her mind alert. She knew more challenges awaited, but she also understood that she had grown stronger. Life on the ranch was demanding, yes, but it was also full of rewards, trust, resilience, connection, and the quiet beauty of nature. She drifted off to sleep, feeling ready for whatever tomorrow would bring, confident in her ability to face the unexpected and grateful for the lessons she had learned. The storm had passed, but its lessons lingered. Clara knew that life here would continue to test her, but she also knew she was no longer afraid. She had found strength she didn't know she possessed, courage in the face of uncertainty, and a deeper understanding of the world around her. And she realized more than ever that this journey, this life on the ranch, was shaping her in ways she could never have imagined. The days following the storm were calm, almost serene. The ranch, refreshed by the rain, seemed to glow under the bright sunlight. Clara's ankle had healed almost completely, allowing her to move freely for the first time in weeks. She felt stronger, more confident, and surprisingly at home in this world so different from the city she had left behind. She had learned not only the rhythm of ranch life, but also the patience and resilience needed to live closely with the land. Clara woke early that morning, the scent of pine and fresh earth filling her senses. The ranch was alive with sounds, the lowing of cows, the neighing of horses, and the distant crow of a rooster. Margaret was already awake, sitting quietly at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, her eyes calm but observant. "Good morning," Clara said softly, smiling. "Morning, dear," Margaret replied. "You're looking healthier today. I can see the progress." Clara felt a warm glow of pride. It was remarkable how much she had grown in such a short time, both physically and mentally. The challenges she had faced, her ankle, the storm, and the overwhelming tasks of ranch life had all contributed to this sense of accomplishment. Ethan appeared shortly after, carrying a bucket of feed for the horses. He glanced at Clara and nodded, his expression calm yet reassuring. "Ready for the day?" he asked. Clara nodded eagerly. There was a quiet excitement in the air, a feeling that the day held promise even if it also held work and challenges. They started with the morning chores. Clara fed the chickens, gathered eggs, and helped refill water troughs while Ethan handled the horses. The rhythm of their work was steady and grounding. Clara found herself moving confidently, no longer hesitant or unsure. She noticed small details she would have missed before, the way the horses' ears flicked in response to sound, the subtle changes in the weather, the way the soil smelled after rain. It was as if the ranch had opened her eyes to a world she had never truly seen. After the morning tasks were completed, Clara and Ethan worked together to repair a section of fencing damaged by the storm. Clara handed him tools, held posts steady, and learned to measure carefully for support beams. The work was tiring but satisfying. Each piece of fence repaired felt like a small victory, a symbol of their combined effort and cooperation. Clara realized that the ranch was not just a place of work, it was a place of learning, growth, and shared responsibility. As the afternoon approached, they paused to rest and share a simple meal on the porch. The sun shone warmly, the land stretching endlessly around them. Clara watched the horses grazing peacefully in the field, the breeze rustling the tall grass. She felt a deep sense of connection, not only to the land but to the life she had become part of here. She thought about how far she had come, from a nervous city girl unsure of her place, to someone who could confidently navigate this world and contribute meaningfully. After lunch, Margaret suggested they take a short walk to enjoy the beauty of the ranch. Clara agreed eagerly, wanting to savor the moment. They moved slowly, Clara careful with her steps, though her ankle no longer caused discomfort. The sun warmed their backs and the sounds of nature surrounded them. Birds sang in the trees, a soft breeze carried the scent of pine, and the distant mountains stood tall and silent, timeless guardians of the land. Ethan followed at a respectful distance, observing the two women and occasionally pointing out a wildflower or a patch of herbs. Clara noticed the subtle ways he connected with the world around him, the gentle care in his touch, the attentiveness in his gaze, the patience he showed not only to her but to every living thing on the ranch. She realized that strength could be quiet, and leadership could be calm and steady rather than loud or demanding. As they walked, Clara and Margaret spoke of memories of past experiences and of the hopes they held for the future. Clara shared stories from her life in the city, and Margaret responded with tales of the ranch and its history. Clara felt a deep sense of belonging. She realized that home was not just a place but a feeling of being accepted, needed, and valued. She felt grateful for the lessons the ranch and its people had taught her. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Clara and Ethan repaired the last few fence posts. The work was nearly complete, and a sense of satisfaction filled the air. They worked side by side, moving with quiet efficiency, communicating without the need for constant words. Clara felt a new level of understanding and trust between them, built through shared effort, challenges faced together, and the bond of living close to the land. When the chores were finished, they gathered in the living room with Margaret. The warmth of the fireplace filled the room, and the scent of burning wood created a comforting atmosphere. Margaret smiled at Clara. "You've done well, my dear. You've grown so much since you arrived." Clara felt a surge of pride and gratitude. She knew that the journey had not been easy, but every struggle had brought her closer to understanding herself and the life she was part of now. Ethan spoke quietly, his voice calm and steady. "You've shown courage and determination, Clara. You adapted quickly, learned fast, and proved yourself capable. The land has taught you, and you've learned well." Clara looked at him, feeling a warmth that went beyond mere gratitude. There was respect, trust, and a sense of mutual understanding that could not be put into words. The evening passed with quiet conversation, laughter, and the simple pleasure of shared company. Clara reflected on the week she had spent on the ranch, the storm, her injury, the hard work, and the moments of quiet beauty. She realized that life here had changed her profoundly. She had learned patience, resilience, and the value of connection, not only to people but to the land itself. As night fell, Clara stepped outside once more. The stars were countless and bright, reflected in puddles and streams across the ranch. The moon cast a soft glow over the fields, and the air was crisp and fresh. She felt a deep sense of peace, a realization that she had found a place where she belonged. The ranch was more than land. It was a living, breathing community, and she was part of it now. Ethan joined her silently, standing nearby as she took in the view. "It's beautiful tonight," Clara said softly. He nodded, his expression calm, reflective. "Yes, it reminds us of what we're working for and what we've endured." Clara felt a quiet connection to him, a shared understanding of the challenges they had faced and the growth they had experienced. They stood together for a long moment, watching the night sky and the peaceful ranch below. Clara thought about her journey, the fear she had felt, the lessons she had learned, and the bonds she had formed. She realized that she was no longer the same person who had arrived weeks ago. She had discovered strength, courage, and resilience she had not known she possessed. Finally, Clara returned inside, feeling a sense of completion. She looked at Margaret and Ethan, feeling gratitude for their guidance, support, and presence. The ranch had tested her, nurtured her, and taught her, and she knew that the experiences she had gained here would stay with her for a lifetime. That night, as she lay in bed, Clara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had faced challenges, experienced fear, and learned to trust herself and others. She realized that life, much like the ranch, required patience, dedication, and care. The lessons she had learned were not just about surviving in a rural environment. They were about resilience, understanding, and finding connection in unexpected places. She thought about the days ahead and the future. Though there would be more work, storms, and challenges, she felt ready to face them. She had grown stronger, more confident, and deeply connected to the land and the people who had welcomed her. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly at home. As she drifted off to sleep, Clara felt a sense of hope and anticipation. She had discovered a life rich with meaning, connection, and beauty. She had found strength in herself, trust in others, and a deep appreciation for the world around her. The ranch had changed her, and in the quiet of the night, she felt a profound sense of gratitude and belonging. The morning sun would rise again, bringing new tasks, new challenges, and new opportunities. But Clara knew she was ready. She had learned that life's difficulties were not obstacles to fear, but lessons to embrace. The ranch had shown her the power of resilience, the importance of trust, and the quiet beauty of a life connected to nature and others. In that moment, Clara understood that she had not just survived the journey, she had grown because of it. And as she closed her eyes, she felt at peace, knowing that the future held promise, hope, and the continued adventure of life on the ranch.